acknowledgements. We acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who gave their lives for this country and its people. And we pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all those who reside, study, work in and visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. Observers in the gallery, I welcome the members to the gallery and ask them to observe in respectful silence as the Chamber deliberates on matters that relate to the City of Burnside. Should there be a fire or any other emergency, the alarm will sound and you are asked to follow directions of Council staff. I need to remind all that Council meetings are live streamed through the City of Burnside website, and a copy of tonight's agenda is available by downloading from this website. I remind elected members of the importance of using their microphones appropriately so that those at home can hear clearly, and request that all in attendance switch their mobile phones off or onto silent. And again, the first on the buzzer to indicate who wishes to speak on the motion once we begin. Apologies are from Councillor Piggott. Leave of absence, there are none. Confirmation of minutes. Councillor Turnbull, you wish to move? Thank you. Those seconder, please. Councillor Cornish, all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Right, we have one deputation tonight from Dr. Fran Parker. Dr. Parker, you have done a deputation before, so we've discussed the rules already, and I'll turn my speaker off and you can turn yours on and you can begin straight away. Just to give your name and your suburb is all is required.
Well, hello again. I'd like to think I'm quite memorable, but just in case, I'll remind councillors my name is Fran Parker and I've lived in my home in Oval Terrace, Kensington Park for 26 years. I recently presented a deputation to council, which I'm pleased to say resulted in a survey, a traffic survey, the results of which have been presented in the agenda for discussion tonight. Having said that, I am somewhat disappointed in the results of the traffic survey, and particularly with some of the ensuing recommendations which do little to improve the situation for residents of Oval Terrace, and would like to make a further deputation now to suggest some amendments. I reiterate that the vast majority of households have no driveways. 3 do, but even these are not long enough to allow off-street parking, just access to a garage. I acknowledge that we do all have access to off-street parking in garages off Mears Lane. However, several households have more than one car, and nearly all the garages in Mears Lane are for one car only, meaning that residents have no choice but to park in the street. I welcome the suggestion to reduce the parking restrictions from 2 hours per day to 1 hour per day. However, for residents who need to park in the street, this still involves moving cars twice a day, and realistically, this isn't going to happen, and residents will be forced to park in only the 25% of the street now left as unrestricted parking, as further restrictions were added to the street since my last deputation. Not quite the result I was after. Clearly, this creates increased strong demand for parking in the area, as this area is also used by not only other residents but also staff from Pembroke and users of the park. Also, this does not reduce the traffic flow, and so the problems of unacceptable levels of fumes twice a day remains. Given the special needs of many of the residents at the northern end of Oval Terrace, as you may or may not know, it is housing trust accommodation, and there are a variety of differing needs in there. Continual access for visitors is needed. This includes health visitors, carers, cleaners, street sweepers and ambulances. I am disappointed that other measures have not been considered. For example, a drive-through kiss and drop at the new, on Shipsters Road, on the new Pembroke property, which has just been completed, would have improved safety for students and reduced traffic congestion on Shipsters Road, as well as offering an alternative to a drop-off on Oval Terrace. Traffic calming measures, for example speed humps on Oval Terrace, would not only improve safety, as cars are often driven at unsafe speeds, and may also deter drivers from using this route, thus reducing the unacceptable traffic volume at peak times. The bus zone on Oval Terrace is unnecessarily restrictive, as it limits, there is no parking from 8 until 4. This could be removed entirely, as bus zones for the school already exist on the parade and could easily be added outside the school on Shipsters Road, where no residents would be affected. This would allow ample parking for the residents of the northern end of Oval Terrace, as well as park visitors. Resident parking permits for residents of Oval Terrace would alleviate the problem considerably. I still do not understand why there seems to be some reluctance to grant this, as I could cite many examples of streets nearby with resident parking, but which have none of the problems of Oval Terrace, i.e. the lack of driveways and the use of the street as a school drop-off zone. I can certainly not find any other streets within the council area that have similar problems. Oval Terrace is unique and deserves to be treated as a special case. Excuse me. Finally, I would just like to say that I and many of the other residents fully support the school, particularly with regard to their maintenance of the Oval. This has been of great benefit to everyone in Burnside. However, they do have this facility through the generosity of Burnside ratepayers and residents. We would really appreciate some reciprocal support to continue to maintain a harmonious relationship with their neighbours and the environment. The school has 10 to 12 access points, gates across the parade, Shipsters Road, Park Road, Holden Street, Walsall Street, amongst others. So there really needs to be a fair and equitable traffic management plan for the entire school interface to ensure safety and amenity of students and the residents surrounding and the surrounding community that the school is part of. Thank you again for hearing our concerns, and we hope you can help improve our amenity and safety in Oval Terrace. Thank you.
Do we have any questions, please? Councillor Dayton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Dr. Parker, for coming along tonight. I just have a couple of points of clarification, if I may. You mentioned the bus zone. Is that a bus zone purely for the students from Pembroke?
It was when I first moved into Oval Terrace, it was actually used by the Burnside bus, the council bus, which picked up what was then elderly residents to come here, or Burnside Village, I'm not sure where. But since, with the changing nature of the residents at the far end of the street, I haven't seen a council bus there in years. It has been by default taken over by Pembroke, but I really cannot see why it needs to be 8 until 4, or why it needs to be there at all.
All day, so it's allocated all day?
Yes.
The other issue is, that you mentioned, is Shipsters Street, I think it is.
Shipsters Road.
Now that all the work's finished, which seemed to go on for a long time, because there's a huge amount of construction, you mentioned, I think the staff have recommended a kiss and drop site. Are you talking about Pembroke making provision on their land for a kiss and drop site?
I was thinking
drop-off
when
site.
I went past recently, they could have had a pull-in driveway right in front of the school, which would mean that the kiss and drop could be off the street, thus making it safer for everybody and less disruptive.
Thank you.
I thought of it before they built it, but I didn't.
And one last question about, you mentioned treatments in Oval Terrace and speed humps. Is that the only treatment that you would think of? What about chicanes and those sort of things that slow traffic down? Because I think you have had a problem with speeding vehicles.
Oh yes, it's quite common. And this, I hasten to add, is not just Pembroke people at all. This is quite often people at night who don't understand the term no-through road and are rushing through to get to the parade, and then they rush back again. So yeah, I'm not fussy about what sort of traffic calming, but anything that would slow the traffic down would be a great boost.
I don't have any other names on the screen, so thank you very much, Dr. Parker, for coming in.
You're welcome.
We have no petitions and we have no questions for public question time. As far as questions on notice are concerned, the answers to the questions 9.1 and 9.2 have been tabled. If we move to 10.1, Councillor Davis is not here, and I've just been advised by the governance officer, and I can get her to read it out if you choose me or wish me to, but apparently it can't be run as a motion on notice without the written permission of the person who put the motion in here to begin with. However, you can run it as a motion without notice, if that's what someone wishes to do tonight. This is in relation to Waterfall Gully community bus opportunities. So you've got a moment or two to think about it, unless you've got some written.
No, I don't have anything written from Councillor Davis, but if it's possible for me to move the motion, the text is in 10.1, and move that as a motion without notice.
Yeah, I've got to do that.
Oh, apologies.
We're not quite there yet. First of all, are there any questions without notice? Right, with that now we can move to 12, and you can now start again, Councillor Hubel.
Can I please move a motion without notice?
You have permission.
Comprised of, the motion at 10.1, please.
Yeah, the answer is yes,
thank
and
you.
so long as you've got a seconder.
Wonderful. I think Councillor Jones will probably second this. This is Councillor Davis would have done this a lot better, but the feeling behind this report and the intention behind this this motion is dealing with the issue of pedestrian traffic on Waterfall Gully Road. Quite frankly, Waterfall Gully Road does not have the capacity to take the amount of pedestrian traffic it has. Obviously, at the end of that road is the Mount Lofty walk from Waterfall Gully, and it's highly popular. So you've got a lot of people trying to get up there to do the walk, but we're very limited in the car parking that's available up there. So looking at this bus service opportunity is really a way of ticking a box of a solution that might be available to the council to keep the area safe. I think the report, was looked at a few meetings ago now, as I think everyone is familiar with the background and the rationale behind this. So this is really just asking for a bit more clarity on that particular option. So I'll just leave it there.
Seconded by Councillor Jones.
Yes, I'm happy to second the motion. We got a report back probably a month ago now. I think it posed a lot of questions that I think need to be thought about. I do think there is a need for a bus service because we know the car park's not big enough for the demand. That the parking, as Councillor Hubel says, is a problem. There's been good community reaction to it. I've had feedback from people saying, can we have a pickup spot here? Can we have a pickup spot here? Chambers Gully. So I think there'll be demand. I'm particularly in favour of 1.4, explore other funding models. I know when Councillor Davis, it was his original idea when it was a volunteer bus. He thought a gold coin donation. I spoke to our MP about it. She suggested $5 return trip. And I think walkers would be prepared to pay that. And it's a kind of, how would we work the logistics of it? So I think that's something to be explored, but I think it's a good idea and I think it warrants further action. And I think it's positive news for Burnside. People are appreciating something we're doing, so I think that's a good thing.
You were there, Councillor Lemon, but you're gone now.
Well, yes,
But now I've got Councillor Hughes, sorry. Stay there, don't turn off.
I just have a quick question in regards to the funding models. I'm just wondering whether the administration would be investigating other similar bus services within Adelaide, such as there's a City Connector bus run from the Adelaide City Council, and also I think Moriata had a shuttle bus to an overflow car park recently, whether we could look at some of those existing bus uses as part of the report.
Yeah, through your worship, yeah, absolutely. We'll take that on board and we'll have a look at it as part of the report back.
Now, Councillor Lemon.
yes, I was going to second it, but I'll just give my support to it. I think it's a good idea, and there's been many instances. This is mainly a parking issue for me. People on Waterfall Gully are absolutely overwhelmed by parkers, and often across their driveways on weekends. And I think that these are our residents, and we need to explore options in terms of making sure that their amenity isn't lost because the end of the road is such a popular destination for them. So I'm very happy to support a report on this.
I don't have anyone else on. Oh, yes, sorry, Councillor Hench.
Thank you, Mayor. Now look, the walkers go up to Mount Lofty Summit, and that's a national park, and they probably go up to the cafe as well. And I'm wondering why we're in the business of providing a service for national parks. Should not this be driven by national parks or other stakeholders? Why is the City of Burnside subsidising a service which we'll start paying $5, you know, residents can pay $5 for, but then soon we'll be carrying the risk of a bus service that's not making any profit. So we, you know, ratepayers will be subsidising this. I'm just really concerned. If I can have an answer to my questions, that would be great. Thank you.
That will be for the mover to respond to when it's your turn to speak again. Okay. Now I have no one else on the list, so we will move actually back to you, Councillor Hubel.
That's a really good point, Councillor Henschke, that you've been made. This is, it's a real dog's breakfast, Waterfall Gully Road, it being because of, yes, it heads up to a national park, it is a state road, but, you know, the city is, you know, responsible for the footpaths and the, you know, the guttering. So from a whole, you know, plethora of issues, there are problems that are faced by, you know, City of Burnside residents. And this is an attempt to help the residents of Waterfall Gully Road. Look, I don't think that we want to be entering into something that's high risk, and I think when we get this report back, we'll have some very clear options in front of us as to what we might want to do and what the best options might be. So this, I agree, it would be great if other levels of government chipped in to help this issue, but look, I don't feel comfortable sitting on my hands when there's a problem and going, well, it's someone else's problem as well, and if they don't do anything, we won't. I think there's a problem, there's something we can do about it, we should be doing something about it. So yes, it does go a lot further, but, you know, I think it's our responsibility to do what is within our power, and this is one part of what that could be.
Right, those in favour? Those against? I think that was a unanimous decision. Well done. Having been a Beaumont Ward Councillor for 8 years, knowing all those issues. Sorry? No, she did put her hand up later. Yeah. It was unanimous. Okay. And I think number 1.4 also looking at exploring other funding models for a bus service actually covers that possibility. All right. Now I'm going to go through the list and see who wishes to withdraw each of these or any of these for debate. So I'll start with 13.1. I'm looking for no one. Okay. Yes, we can move it now. Councillor Hughes moved, Councillor Cornish seconded. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Marketing and promotion strategies, 13.2, councillor Carbone, so we'll hold that one till later. 13.3, provision of drinking fountains.
I just like to
Speak
move
to that.
No, just to move it.
Okay, all right,
Just
so
move it.
you're moving that one, councillor Hubel, and seconded by councillor Cornish. Those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. 13.4, the draft environmental sustainability. Councillor Davey, you wish to discuss that one. Proposed town hall fees, 13.5. No one, so councillor Cornish, you're moving. Councillor Lemon, seconded. Those in favour? Carried, unanimous. No, councillor Jones, unanimously. Thank you. The CEO's report, the CEO's report, councillor Lemon? You wish to withdraw that, or you wish to?
No, what, oh,
You're on the screen. Oh, okay. Right, so shall we move it? Councillor Henschke, you've got a question, have you? If you have a question, then you'll have to withdraw it. Yes. Okay, all right, so you're going to withdraw that one. 13.7, Burnside War Memorial Hospital Board of Directors reappointments. Move it, councillor Davey. Seconded, councillor Hubel. Those in favour? Those against? Not unanimous, but carried. All right, 13.8, delegations under Planning Development Infrastructure Act 2016. You would like to withdraw that one, councillor Davey? Oval Terrace? Oh, I've missed one, sorry. Code of Practice Review, 13.9. Happy to move it. Councillor Cornish has moved, seconded. Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Oval Terrace, councillor Davey. The draft Regional Public Health Plan, councillor Lemon. That's it. Right. We go back to councillor Carbone, 13.2, marketing and promotion strategies.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'll move the report we received, and I pulled it because I just like to plant a seed for our next budget. That's all it's going to be today, just planting that seed for a discussion at a later day. But I think we can all agree on however we view the way we currently engage our residents, however we market ourselves to our residents, whatever communication strategy we use. I think one thing we all agree on is that we do need to, as good as we are, we do need to engage our residents better. I think no matter which side you sit on, that's one thing we can all agree on. And I think there's one thing we can all agree on, and that is our residents, our customers, are bombarded with messages all day, every day. From the moment they wake up to the time they go to bed, it's just nothing but thousands and thousands of messages that they receive, just going about their daily life. So for us, the challenge, as with any company and any politician, no matter who you are, the challenge is always going to be breaking through. How can we get in front of their minds? How can we engage with them? How can we remember? How can we promote the messages that we want to promote? And so it's getting tougher and it's getting harder. Okay, no matter how much we campaign, no matter how much letterboxing or door knocking we do, you know, it is a key weakness of us, and that is we struggle to keep top of mind with our residents. And we need to look at ways that we can do this better, but at the same time do it more cheaply as well. We can't just simply letterbox all day, every day, and email all day, every day. The costs would just be huge, and there's no way we could afford that. So we need to look at ways that we can do it better and cheaper. Now, I've had a look at the report, and I've had a look at our annual community survey, okay? And look, I get it. Our residents who took part in the survey told us that they want to be communicated via email and letterbox. Okay, and so I have really no leg to stand on. Except, all I can say is that sometimes we need to look beyond the data, beyond the spreadsheet, okay? And look to the future and find out what is the best way for us to basically fish where the fish are. The entire world is moving towards social media. In fact, they're not moving towards social media, they are in social media right now. Businesses, politicians across the globe are in this space big time. But for some reason, we're not. And that's something for the future. Okay, I won't bang on too much about that now. But I have had a look around at what other people have done in this space, and probably the one person who I really have to say I've got to hang my hat on is the former Lord Mayor of the City of Adelaide, Martin Haese. Now, anyone who follows him, or now follows him, or even followed him previously, would have to agree that the City of Adelaide, in the previous term, set a fantastic new benchmark for the way they use social media to keep their residents engaged. And if you haven't done it already, please do jump on Martin Hase's Facebook page, or maybe have a look at some old stuff that the City of Adelaide have done, and you'll be very, very impressed. And more local, right here in Burnside. There were a number of candidates in the last election who used social media in their campaign, and the better they used social media, the better they did in the polls. And we all know who we're talking about. They did very well, and so social media does have a place in Burnside. Now, I just want to give you one example of something that I've done in recent months that proved to me that social media is very, very useful in terms of engaging our residents. And that was when we talked about the wheel park. Now, we did our own survey, put thousands of dollars into it, thousands of man hours into it as well, and we had 800 people take part in our survey. I put 10 minutes into it with $0, and I got 1,700 surveys. So there's just one example of the opportunity we can use to really enhance social media for a fraction of the cost and for a fraction of the hours. And my last thing is that I often get criticised, that is, social media misses a demographic. It's sort of just for the young people, you know? And that is absolutely not the case. And another example I'll use is during
Councillor Carbone, you've gone over your time.
My biggest demographic, my most engaged demographic on my social media is male and female 65 plus. So that's it, I've said my bit, and I'll talk about it at budget time next year.
Right, Councillor Lemon.
Yes, I'm willing to second this report. Thank you very much, Administration, for the hard work that you've put into this. I disagree with pretty much everything my co-councillor has said.
Oh, there's no surprise there.
We survey our residents, and it is a statistically valid survey, unlike my co-councillor's Wheel Park survey, which was seriously statistically invalid. So you got 1,700 people in 15 minutes. How many of those were insomniac Canadians? You just don't know. The stuff that we do can actually help us make decisions because it's validated, not because there's a huge response. But that aside, our people have said to us more than once, that survey isn't the only survey where we've had, they prefer to get email as a means of communication with us. I think we need to step away from why do we need the churn and why do we need the rah, rah, rah. Let's look at the world as it actually exists. People are disengaged with politics as a general rule. People in council areas, and I include people in the Adelaide City Council that may or may not have been engaged with the previous Adelaide City Council. I mean, so people loved the Facebook of it. Did it mean that they were more satisfied by the sort of services that that city provided? I don't know. I don't measure their satisfaction with what the city provides by how many Facebook friends the Lord Mayor might have. I don't think we can do that. I think that's actually quite a spurious way of looking at things. So I thank administration for this. I think the way that we deal with our customers, I don't agree that we need to be better. I think we can be better. We can always be better at everything we do. But I think when people get involved with council, they get involved with council because there's something that specifically engages them. And it could be barking dogs, it could be, and invariably is, the two-storey place going up next door, it could be speeding traffic, it could be no bicycle lanes in the area, it could be the playground's going to cut down, it could be any number of reasons, but it usually is a thing, not this amorphous, I must be engaged with the council, therefore I will join the Facebook. They do. The artists join the Pepper Street Facebook site. People that want to be in the library are part of that, and the other websites we've got have all got people that are particularly interested in those issues. And I think that that's quite reasonable for a council. We're not in business of selling anything. People live in this area, and what we do is provide services. Nor are we in the business of actually whipping up huge affection from our residents, because mostly they won't think about us. And a really, really good council is seamless. It just works. Everything happens as it should. There are no issues. It doesn't matter how many Facebook pages you've got and how many people you've got working on a content-hungry machine that chews it up. We aren't necessarily going to have better customer satisfaction no matter how much money we make on that. So I think that we can do better and we will do better. I feel that we can actually engage our residents on issues of interest, like heritage matters, like planning issues, like verge maintenance, like parks and gardens, like environmental sustainability measures, and they are things that people may join and people may follow. But just to have a blanket, aren't we great, really doesn't float my boat, I'm afraid, I have to say.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you.
You're okay, because there's no one else on here.
Oh, okay. I wasn't thinking, so it's reaction. Thank you, Councillor Carbone, for your motion. I will support it, and because I also thank the staff for all the effort that's gone into pulling together all of the information in the report. And it is useful, certainly, for us to consider for budgetary issues and planning. But I'd like to say our community engagement people do a huge amount of work and do it very well. They have got so many, there's so many different approaches they need to use, and we make mistakes occasionally, but there are so many areas we have to consult with and engage with and inform our residents about that I think we do it pretty well. We do, as Councillor Lemon has said, have a very good community survey every year, and there's no better way to gauge what our community want than a statistically accurate survey, which we must listen to. And they've given us their rationale and their reasons for why they want the message given to them that they do. With respect, Councillor Carbone, Adelaide City Council is very different to Burnside. They are a largely business council, and their demographic is mainly young business people and residents. They've got very close links to peak bodies, the state government, the public sector, the peak business bodies and unions. So they're essentially a lobbying enterprise. Burnside is totally different. So I think, this will be useful for us to consider, but and I'll certainly support it. But I don't think we should angst about a communications and marketing strategy, because we are listening to our community and working with them, and I think we're doing all right.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor Carbone now to sum up. Can put the motion? Right, those in favour please raise your hands. Those against, carried unanimously. So we're moving to 13.4, which is Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Page 73.
I've got a slightly alternative motion, with just a couple of additions. One, that the report be received. Two, that Council endorse the City of Burnside Draft Environmental Sustainability Strategy 2019 to 2023 for the purpose of proceeding to community consultation with the following additional dot points. That we include preservation of the natural environment at healthy habitats and resource allocation at corporate action. And 3, the report be presented to Council with the results of the community consultation and proposed next steps. So I thank Alan Harvey and Aaron and Michelle Kennedy and all who contributed to this report. It's very important. Our strategy is and our environment and sustainability strategy is hugely important. But I just think that before it goes out to community consultation, we actually have to include these 2 key elements. If you'll see on page 76, the key inclusions, the focus area in the first part is healthy habitats, and this talks about creating and maintaining healthy habitats and tree canopy for people and wildlife. I think, and in the priorities of that, we need the 3rd dot point, which is to preserve the natural environment. I don't think it's complete if it doesn't have this reference right up front in the focus area, because preservation and maintenance of our natural environment is an intrinsic part of Burnside, and as we've discussed recently in other areas, there are many threats to its survival. We have very little residual natural bush left. We have it on the hills face zone and along a lot of our watercourses, but I think we actually have to have this. This is a strategy that will drive a lot of our work. We have to have this right up front. The other area is the 3rd priority, focus area and priority, is under corporate action on page 77, leading through action, engagement and advocacy. I wish to add resource allocation at this point, or as in a priority. I don't really care, but right up there we need to have resource allocation, because if we don't allocate resources and consider when we're doing the budget process the allocation of resources for this strategy, it's not going to happen. So that's the reason for my wanting to include these 2 aspects. Otherwise, the documents, the strategy is fine, and it demonstrates a lot of work, and I think it's fine to go out to our community. Thanks very much.
Councillor Henschke, you wish to second it?
Yes, I wish to second it. Thank you, Councillor Davey, for those very important points, because I was just last night reading the Adelaide Hills Council biodiversity strategy, and they very strongly, a theme strongly in theirs was preservation of natural environment, obviously, strong focus on linkages and corridors, habitat corridors, and there's no reason why, when you fly over the City of Adelaide like I did the other day and you look out your aeroplane window, you will see these corridors of habitat running along the creek lines from the Adelaide Hills all the way down, connecting to the parklands, invariably the sea. Very strong vegetation visible from the hills down, and we have to maintain that and enhance that. I'd like to see more restoration along the creek lines, very strong obviously in the Adelaide Hills Council, but no reason why we can't do more, as in 2.1, preservation of the natural environment. So whether or not that's enough, or whether we have to add linkages, perhaps administration, that might be a question to the administration now, whether you see this as connecting with the Adelaide Hills Council, mapping, does our strategy map onto their strategy strongly enough? Is that a given? And are we creating these habitat corridors, or you perhaps have the right terminology for that, but these linkages for the movement of koalas, not so much kangaroos in the city, but koalas, bird life, stream life. So perhaps that's a question and comment all mixed up, but if you could expand on that, it'd be great. Thank you.
Through the chair, the idea of habitat corridors is a really important one for natural environment and conserving wildlife, and it's certainly something that came up in consultation with elected members and discussions throughout the council as we were putting together the strategy. And that's why the healthy habitat dot point includes healthy wildlife populations. That's certainly a key action that could roll out under this plan, is looking further into wildlife corridors, but that's probably more of an action rather than a strategic priority. It's an action that would fit neatly under that priority, yeah.
Councillor Hubel.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an excellent new strategy. Thank you for the preparation of this. I think it's also evidence of the good work, that our administration is doing in the environmental space. So it's good to see this coming through. I particularly, wanted to make a point to elected members to be mindful of blue sky ideas of directions that the city can go in. We have these strategies such as these that underpin the day-to-day, and one example, we could think of our reliance on energy. We could, for example, think, okay, the city of Burnside is going to become, 100% reliant on renewable energy in our own right, and that comes from solar arrays on buildings, on land, storage in batteries. That's not, an initiative like that is not within the day-to-day, but it is within the purview of us thinking about what is possible and what can drive these strategic priorities. So I guess, like Councillor Carbone, just wanted to plant seeds of let's keep thinking, let's keep discussing, let's keep talking about what is possible and where we, let's do everything we can. So again, thank you.
Councillor Henschke.
Can I add one bit of another point, or have I spoken?
If you can turn it into a question.
Yes, can I turn in a question?
That would be a good idea.
Thank you for that suggestion. Does our strategy support the creation of community groups to restore, for example, creeks? For example, there's a situation in the Hills, the Sixth Creek Catchment Group. I happen to be on that committee, and it's a community group who receive grant funding, all driven by the residents. So is that possible in the city of Burnside along our creeks and reserves?
Through the chair, yes, I think that is very possible, and it's something that the council's already involved in through the conservation volunteers and the Burnside Urban Foresters programs, but also in supporting other community groups through community grants and other support that's provided. And those sort of things were certainly discussed as actions and included in the plan under corporate action through engagement and support of the community.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this fine report. Can I just ask, are these additions going to do they make any changes that are difficult? Are they going to throw out the wheel nut on the 15th axle, potentially?
Through the chair, no, I think they can be accommodated. The response to resource allocation was included in attachment B, I believe, but certainly if council decides to go with those, we can work them in.
So that takes me to my second point. Were they already here? I see that my reading of this was under healthy habitats, protect and promote biodiversity, including habitat for healthy wildlife populations. The preservation of the natural environment, that is actually implicit in that dot point for me. That would have been. Is that what you meant? Are these things already in this document and we've somehow missed them?
Through the chair, I think the intent of most of the priorities that were within there, several of them were directed to achieving that particular priority. Yep.
Councillor Henschke.
Oh, thank you. I have another question. It's a very good strategy. So it just brings to mind some questions that I want to test out. Will this strategy help eradicate vermin, foxes in the city of Burnside? Because they will eat the possums and fauna.
Through the chair again, through action planning, that is something that could be identified as a necessary action and would fit under the healthy habitats. Yep. So it certainly wouldn't be discounted.
Right, empty screen. I just wanted to say that I think even though you wrote this before we declared the climate emergency, it fits very tightly and firmly with and connects with. There's no point in having a policy without an intent, and with no point in having an intent without a policy. So I think these two things work really well together. So I congratulate the staff on the work they've done. And I would return it to Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you everyone for your contribution. Firstly, I'll say that I didn't include it in my original introduction. Preservation of the natural environment and watercourses is actually in our City of Burnside strategic plan. So that is why I think it's essential that this be right up front and front of centre in our environmental sustainability strategy. I just think that's something that's key, and I think our community would expect that. And I also think that since we have corporate action in here, and corporate action is what provides the leadership and the means to achieve this, we have to include resource allocation. I think it's a no-brainer, and amongst all the other activities that are listed here, it's something that has to be considered and front of centre for us to be able to achieve the strategy. So I hope you'll support it.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. We move to 13.6, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just have some questions, quick questions.
First of all, you need to move that the report be received.
Sorry, my apologies. I move that the report be received.
Then you can ask your questions.
Thank you. Just a few questions for the administration, just running through them. Just starting at the end, the future agenda items. There's a dot point there referring to Telstra proposal for Kensington Gardens. The question is the administration engaging with Telstra about their new telephone boxes and advertising posts that have been installed recently? And I've asked questions on behalf of residents who are quite upset about the one in Dulwich, for example, and how that fits into the heritage conservation zone at the Dulwich Heritage Precinct. And will that future agenda item, address the concerns of the community over more of these quite obtrusive neon light installations popping up in their suburbs? Thank you.
Through the chair, that agenda item does not relate to that particular topic. However, we have been having discussions on that topic, which Magnus can give a little bit of an update on. The agenda topic we've got on there is we've had a request from Telstra around installing a telecommunications facility. We're still waiting on some details from them around exactly where they're proposing to locate it. when we get that information, we'll provide it to council through an infodoc, and then we'll put a report to council with that proposal. It's just flagged so that we can keep track of it, but Magnus can give a little update on the other facilities.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the Telstra billboards, I think there are about 11 or 12 within the city of Burnside, and certainly one in Dulwich. For us at the moment, it's a watching brief. When I say that, there is some I think it's High Court action in Canberra at the moment involving some interstate councils and Telstra over these things.
Okay.
It's not an Adelaide thing or a Burnside thing, it's an Australia-wide thing. And at the end of that, we hope to understand a little bit more around the legislative framework that these things sit in. Telstra claim, not surprisingly, that they need zero consents for the units, both in relation to permits under the local government for their installation on council roads, and also in relation to planning approvals. There are some other, not theories, but thoughts around that, but we're really waiting for this action to play out so we can get a much better understanding about whether we can control these or not, and if so, in which circumstances. So it's a long way of saying we don't know yet, but we will certainly inform council when we do know more about the framework.
Are there any more that we know about going to be installed?
Through the chair, not that we know about. We know of, I think, 11 or 12 also in Burnside. There's a couple on Port Rush Road. There was one on Glen Osmond Road East, Frueville, that was removed voluntarily by Telstra based on some safety concerns. Driver visibility was key to that. Certainly one or two, or one in Dulwich. I couldn't name the rest, but there's around that many. I don't think there are, but I don't think there are any more proposed. And certainly Dipty has been liaising closely with Telstra on this topic around the issue of road safety. And one of the big topics is, believe it or not, dwell time. So the amount of seconds that each ad can be there is called dwell time. And there are some regulations at state level in relation to road safety which suggest that the dwell time was too short. The ads were flicking over too quickly. So they've been working through a number of those issues with Telstra related to road safety.
So do we have to wait for an accident to happen at the Dulwich roundabout, or is there something we can do to flag that there is a risk that this one at Dulwich could create an accident?
Through the chair, if we were to go off, we could go off on our own, although at great expense, and so we're certainly hoping that no accidents will occur, but we really want to know a little bit more about the legal framework and legislative context that these things sit in before we launch into something.
In the meantime, can we just write to them and say, can you just turn off the flashing Kentucky Fried Chicken ads that are flashing past every 2 seconds, so that when people get to the roundabout, they're not going to be distracted? Because it's right at the roundabout, and it's a very good point that you make tonight, and I think we need to be very aware of this issue. But thank you. We'll take this for take it offline. Thank you. My next question about the CEO report very quickly was in relation to item number 39. This is about the heritage the State Planning Commission's implementation of the e-planning system. And there are a number of paragraphs there that relate to that. And one paragraph refers to the People and Neighbourhoods Policy that's just recently been released. And my question is, I wish to clarify whether elected members or anyone, in fact, can provide a comment about that policy, because my understanding is that the State Planning Commission will not receive any comments in regards to the People and Neighbourhoods Policy, as opposed to the Code.
Through the chair, I'm getting an indication from my left that the public is able to make comments in relation to that particular discussion paper.
Okay. And
I believe it is on your say.
Yeah. And just another question regarding item on page 115. When will the report be presented to Council on green waste? Which is number 13, item 13 on the reports to Council tables. I'm just flagging some dates here. The report says that we present it to Council. Was there a date for that? And why is it 2020?
Through your worship, because it will be considered as part of the 2019-20 annual business plan. That will be presented. Alan? When are you planning to present that?
Thank you, Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Harvey, and
through the Mayor, that was a result of the original report that was brought in response to your motion on notice.
Yep.
So again, it's another one of those placeholders for us to make sure that we do bring it back into the budget cycle and then discuss it at that point. So I think it'll be brought back as part of the budget bidding or the annual business plan and budget setting process.
which I'm advised is early in the year rather than late in the year of 2020.
Okay. Thank you. My other question is in relation to another report requested. It was asked for in January for results in March, and now the date is moved to October. That's at page 115, and that was in relation to the report for subsidiary financial information, item number 4. The question is, why has it taken from January to March, now October, to get some financial information from our subsidiaries? Just seems to be dragging on.
Ms Reynolds.
Through the Chair, that is correct. We have been following up with the subsidiaries to get the long-term financial plan information. There is an issue, a matter that needs to be considered further with Brownhill Keswick Creek. There is a fundamental matter around ownership of assets, which is quite a technical concept that's still being worked through with the CEO's group as well as the financial management staff across councils. The fundamental issue is around who owns the assets, whether it's the councils who own the assets on the land that it sits, or whether it's a subsidiary that owns the assets. With whatever the decision is, it obviously has a number of implications for all of the councils. Currently, there is a discussion paper that is being developed and discussed at the CEO level. And once we have the outcome from the discussion paper, we'll have the long-term plan, which we can then present to council.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Cornish, you wish to second?
Oh, no, you still got it? Yep, happy to second.
Nothing to say?
Nope.
Councillor Henschke, to you.
Thank you. Happy to vote. Put the motion.
Please raise your hands. Those against? Carried unanimously. To 13.8, Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Your Worship. I move in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Do I need to read it out? Or can that be taken as read?
We're going to have it as read.
Thanks.
Unless you're making any changes.
No changes, but I did have a couple of questions, or one significant question, so I'll put that up. But then my question is, or should I wait till it's seconded? No, you can do your question. Okay. I'd just like to know how we as a council can be assured that the powers and functions as delegated through this motion, these whole powers as they're outlined, are applied by the CEO with sub-delegation down the management lines to the relevant council officers. So that's essentially our planners. And what guidelines do they have to work to as employees of the City of Burnside? Thanks.
Looks like we're seeking Mr. Heinrich to answer this. I'll seek an explanation from the Governance Officer rather than it being passed forward and forward and forward. Might as well come straight from her. Thank you, Ms Matthews.
Through the Chair. So what the process is with the delegations and the sub-delegations of them following Council making them tonight, if Council does, is that they're forwarded to Barry tomorrow morning, the CEO, to sign off. And then from there, they're then distributed to the relevant staff members, informing them that they have new powers under the delegation documents that are endorsed. And then it's about working through each of their roles to make sure that they understand how to implement those delegations.
I'll read that out. What guidelines do they have to work to as employees of the City of Burnside? So we've got the delegations right. So how do they know how to apply them as City of Burnside employees in the City of Burnside?
Through the Chair, it's probably important to note that most of these delegations tonight are not around development assessment. They're around things that we probably won't be facilitating much at all, like infrastructure agreements and things of the like. The delegations in this report relate to things that have been parts of the Act which have been switched on or become operational. I think the question relates more to development assessment, and that doesn't get switched on until the 1st of July next year. In order to more broadly answer the question, if we compare next year to the current situation, it's not a lot different. So the current situation is the council delegates powers to the CEO, and then the CEO will then sub-delegate those powers accordingly. And in terms of how we then make decisions, there are two things. There's the legislation and the development plan, and then there's also the can't remember the name of the policy, but there's a policy of council which determines which things come before the CAP. That policy next year will probably, as I understand it, need to be revoked because it won't have any work to do anymore, because the things that are sent next year from the 1st of July to the CAP are not dictated by individual council policies, but more by the PDI Act itself. So the Act tells us what we have to send to the panel and otherwise. And other than that, we've got legislation which tells us how we procedurally deal with development applications, and that deals with things like public notification, when it's to be done, how it's to be done, and what other procedures we need to follow in terms of assessing planning applications.
I'm happy to second the motion. I do have a follow-up question though for Councillor Davey, because it raises quite a very good issue in terms of the development of some sort of framework and planning so that we're ready when 1 July and we're not chasing our tail and trying to get up to speed and getting that transition right. And obviously this chamber, I think, would like a bit more of that information about how that planning's going and where it's up to between now and July, I think. Would that be something that you're looking at?
Through the Chair, absolutely. I've just received an email tonight with a framework plan, a change management plan that we're working through at the moment. So it's not just a planning thing. So the transition from the new, current Act to the new Act affects, well, it affects the planning team, the building team, but it also affects IT, it affects records management, it affects customer service, and to some extent operations as well. So we do have a team put together that's got representatives from those areas on it. I think we might have, if we haven't, we can certainly distribute info docs around this to give council more information about the things that we're considering and what we are. We're not going to wait till June and then suddenly worry about it. We've been worrying about it since I can remember, to be honest. And look, we are looking at doing 2 workshops for council, one on the 29th of this month. That will be, Gavin Layden will be back here to help facilitate that. That'll be really about providing an overview of the code and how it sits together, all the other things it needs to contemplate. And the second one will be closer to February next year, which will be a lot more detailed, because we'll then know a lot more of the detail on what we want to recommend to council in terms of the submission that we'll ultimately make back to DIPT, which I think it's end of February next year. So there's a lot of, it's like a duck thing, there's lots of paddling, but we can give you certainly an update in terms of what we're thinking at the moment.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Just a supplementary question. Can you just give me, thank you for clarifying that, my first question. Can you just give me some examples of what this applies to? I'm still not clear what functions this applies to in full.
Oh, certainly, through the chair, just excuse me while I refresh my memory. It was a few weeks ago that we sat down with governance and did this.
I think Governance Office has got some suggestions, Councillor Davey.
Through the chair, some of the provisions relate to things like swimming pool inspections and compliance audits, how community engagement's done, some of the frameworks around what it's currently called development plan amendments. It's lots of technical things. It's not a lot of, it's really technical. It's not, it's not the standard, it's all the technical little bits around it. Some of it's not high-level strategic stuff. It's technical.
That's what I'm getting at.
Operational stuff.
Yes. So it's how, what guides the decisions at that level. Decision making at that level.
That's what you're asking. Yeah. That's what these questions are. Yeah. And that's what I think Mr. Heinrich is just trying to find.
Well, through the chair, the matters that the delegations relate to are sort of set out in the attachment in Appendix 43, which starts on page 144 and then runs for a number of pages after that. So it covers things like panels established by joint planning boards or councils. This is something we haven't considered. Community engagement charter, the power to make submissions in relation to any proposal, to prepare or amend a designated instrument. So in short, it's a lot of the things that are covered in this particular report are things that we wouldn't be doing a lot of, if any. Through the chair, if I recall correctly, this doesn't get to that yet. Is that the general enforcement and assessment regime hasn't been switched on yet. So these delegations relate only to those parts of because the Act's been turned on bit by bit. It's not all going to come on all at once. So these are delegations in relation to things that are being turned on now. So all those things related to enforcement and assessment. They'll presumably be turned on the 1st of July next year, and that's the main focus of what we're trying to get to the bottom of now, and because that's their bread and butter stuff is assessment and enforcement, and so the focus of our submission to the Commission will be around those things. And there'll be another report at some stage next year before the 20th of July that will recommend the actual delegations in respect to those things that you're specifically talking about.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Councillor Henschke.
Oh, thank you. Quick question. Why are we doing this now? And it relates to timing of things, but is there a particular... we didn't start in August, or... so just is there a timeline plan? Thank you.
Through the Chair, the parts of the Act which we're making delegations under were turned on the 1st of July 2019, and the Development Act provisions at that time were revoked. So currently Council needs to make these delegations, so if we need to use those parts of the Act that have been turned on, that these delegations relate to, we have the powers to do that.
Thank you.
Sorry, and now I'm going to get into rather some technical water too, because the training that I've had so far about the new plan and the new assessment is that council is further removed from all development. If we're so removed, why are we providing delegations? Wouldn't that be a statutory thing that just automatically happens, and that because council could revoke any one of these delegations at any point in time, requiring all of those decisions to come to this chamber for assessment and review? Wouldn't that be the case if we decided not to vote these delegations in right now? The state would have no option, and all these decisions would have to come to us. So I don't quite understand the process as why this chamber is delegating something. Like, is it just a rubber stamp? What's... I'm just trying to work out the relationship.
Through the Chair, these are the powers which have been turned on, which are applicable to council, not state. So if council wants to apply these powers in the Act, which have been transferred across from the Development Act, council needs to make the delegations from council to the CEO, and the CEO sub-delegate them to staff if we need to use those powers of enforcement to do other planning, some of the technical issues that are in the delegations. So these are the powers that are allowed by the Act to go to council.
I guess these are stepping stone approvals before the big one. But I'm pleased that Mr. Heinrich has been able to explain to you the process that we need to go through in relation to workshops, because I did meet with Aaron and Magnus last week to discuss, and Barry, to discuss how we were going to deal with this, because I think it is absolutely essential that we all understand, and it is quite worrying as a ratepayer, let alone as mayor, the direction and the issues that relate to those 3,000 pages that we've got now that supposedly replace the 23,000, but still have huge holes in terms of how we can use that plan. And Councillor Cornish is perfectly right. It's removing even further consultation processes and the power of the councils to determine their own futures. So they're the really major issues that we will have to grapple with and respond to. So, Councillor Jones.
I've just got a question. Go ahead. This is all connected. As you know, probably know, I think the cap is fundamentally undemocratic, and I'm opposed to it. And I personally will vote against this just to refuse to delegate my powers to them, frankly.
The
cap is part of this. The CEO, we delegate the power to the CEO, who then sets up the cap.
The powers of delegation to the cap, through the Chair, sorry, is a completely separate set of delegations than the ones that are being considered tonight. It's talking about regional planning panels and some of those powers, but we don't have one of those. So
regions as opposed to city regions, city areas. It is complex, but we do need to know what we're voting for. So it is taking us a little time, but I think that time is about clarity and information.
The planning agreement. 4A, sorry. Helps if
Could I ask a question?
Well, I think you might need to wait till this one's resolved. If you wouldn't mind, Councillor Dave.
Yeah, about 148.
148.
Section 83 of the Act.
Panels established, is that what you're talking about? Is that what you're talking about? Panels established?
No, they're looking up the Act.
Sorry, for those who've got the document in front, 12.1 or the panels, or 12, panels established by joint planning boards or councils.
Could I ask just a quick question? Would it be worthwhile deferring this for consideration till after we've workshopped it? I don't know how others would feel.
I've just been told that is urgent, it's gone out to all councils and that we must make a decision because otherwise we are acting without any powers at all in relation to these matters.
Yeah, so what happens to decisions made between now and the 1st?
Someone asked the question. I've asked it.
Okay. Through the chair, to answer your question about CAP's powers, the powers that are in the delegations are exactly the same as the powers that council has currently made under the Development Act, which have been turned off, that exist currently. So there's sections of the delegations under the Development Act 1993 that no longer exist, and their powers have been turned on in the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act. And to ensure that if we need to replace a member of the council assessment panel, we need to have the powers transferred across.
That's right.
This is why we're doing this. It's come about because some powers were turned off in one act before the delegations were ready in the other. So we just need to...
Through your worship, CAP, regardless of your personal position on CAP, still have a role to play and they've been delegated by previous council through the CEO and through that committee. This basically just enforces them to be able to continue to be able to do that and have the delegation of the council to do that on behalf of the council. But that's just one of many changes or additions that they've made as part of this new delegations that have been asked to provide to you. I would suggest that you would vote this through to allow us to have the authority to delegate this through the CEO and the sub-delegate through. If there are any particular changes that you would specifically like to make at a separate time, you can do through as a motion on notice, and you could specifically ask us to consider that at that time.
Councillor Lemon.
Yes, I thought I'd wade into the debate. This is a machinery of government change in a lot of ways. I don't think there's any Swifties being pulled here, and I don't think we need to be nervous about this. This is administrative. This is taking the responsibility from one administrative staff for one act and moving it to another. So if we don't pass this tonight, our cap can't sit anymore. And a whole raft of other things will not happen in this city anymore. So it's very important that we pass this. As I say, I don't think there are any Swifties here. This is little dribs and drabs, a handful of pebbles of a new act that's being switched on very, very slowly, and the proof of it will be in the pudding. When you look at item 12, as you say, on page 148, panels established by joint planning boards or councils. This is one size fits all. Sometimes you're going to have joint planning boards, sometimes you're going to have joint councils. This is actually going to firm up over time. But what we're doing right now is ensuring that when we work with development processes, our CEO has the capacity to delegate to his staff so that this council can continue being functional between now and next July, or now and next week even. So it is an administration. It's an administrative matter that has arisen because we have had a legislative change. And when you have legislative changes, administration always changes. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to be looking under the bed for the bogeyman, because I don't think that the bogeyman exists here. I think that this is something that's gone out to all councils around about at the same time, so that they all can continue to actually behave within a legislative framework. If there's a bogeyman here somewhere, then I'd have to say this government is a lot cleverer than I've ever given it credit for.
I think there are a number of things that I'm just getting some additional advice as well, and I think Councillor Lemon's absolutely right. I don't think there's anything sinister here. This is just about a process, because at the moment, if we don't pass this tonight, we can't do any expiation notices. We can't provide authorised officers. We can't do pool inspections. We can't run enforcement notices. We can't do court applications. We can't do anything at all. And as Councillor Lemon said, CAP can't operate, whether you like it or not. It has a function, and without that function, we'd be in dire straits, because people who've got applications in for development of houses or putting in fences or whatever that they're requiring are actually going to be stopped and halted, and that would actually stop one of the major functions of our council administration. So I think we are in a position, well, hopefully you're in a bit better position to understand the impact of this, that it's not a sinister something that we have to hide behind. It's just something that we have to empower in order for our staff to continue on working the way they do work, until we get the new plans in that start to have some effect, not to really till July next year, 2020, but we have an input into by February of 2020. So back to Jane to sum up. Happy to put motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carry. Now move to 13.10. Oval Terrace, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Welcome David Hayes to answer any questions.
I've got a slightly amended motion to put up. 1, that the report be received. 2, that the administration write to Oval Terrace residents, Pembroke School and others involved in the recent community engagement process to advise them of Council's resolution. 3, that the administration investigate further and undertake the following trials for student drop-off and safety. At 3.1, reduce the Oval Terrace no parking restrictions to 30 minutes in the morning and afternoon traffic peaks. 3.2, implement a student kiss and drop zone on Shipsters Road. 3.3, implement a trial kiss and drop zone on Park Road and implement an associated pedestrian refuge in the centre of Park Road. And 3.4, implement the recommendations in the Circa report. 4, that a meeting be arranged with Pembroke school representatives, ward councillors and the administration to discuss improvements and practices to traffic management to optimise safe pedestrian and vehicle movements associated with and in the streets adjacent to the school to ensure safety of students and residential amenity of the community. And 5, that the administration undertake a review of the above undertakings in March 2020 to ascertain the impacts and success or otherwise of the trial and report the findings to Council in April 2020. So as we've heard tonight and previously, this report has been developed as a result of a previous resolution. Essentially, and the survey was carried out in July as a result of that. Essentially because the residents of Oval Terrace are concerned about their residential amenity and access to parking. As we've heard tonight and as you have seen, Oval Terrace is a tiny cul-de-sac and is experiencing quite high traffic volumes. There's debate about how high they are. Some say they're not high for around a school. The residents feel that they are a bit high. This little street is comprised of 27 very small residences, mostly single-fronted, without driveways for any visitor parking. Some have rear access to Mears Lane, so parking access is provided in most other streets of Burnside is very limited. So their complaint is that they don't have the same access rights for their visitors, tradesmen, caretakers and all of those people outside their house. I think it's reasonable. The rates of response to the survey were not as large as I expected, especially in the broader community, because there are flow-on problems, traffic issues around Park Road and in the RSL car park, the one off adjacent to the Pembroke Middle School, which runs off the parade. But the report has found that and recommends, well, the report actually doesn't recommend, sorry, our staff recommend that there be a reduction in the hours for the traffic flow through in Oval Terrace to minimise the parking restrictions for the staff. So that hence my reducing the parking restrictions to 30 minutes in the morning and then again in the afternoon. And because there's been a huge amount of work around the area on Shipsters Road with the installation of the whole new building in Pembroke, with the traffic footing across Shipsters Road, there's an opportunity there for a kiss and drop zone, and that should take some pressure off the Oval Terrace area. Another kiss and drop zone, which the staff have recommended on Park Road, should also assist the process. And the other issue that was raised is there are some concerns of residents about crossing of Park Road and risks to children in that traffic area. So what we've got is we've got increasing traffic in the whole area. The Oval Terrace residents are still concerned, and my concern is that Pembroke is a large school, a very important school. It has 1,700 students along with staff in a residential area. It's surrounded by residential properties. It has about 10 or 12 access points across the range of streets, and our deputy outlined those tonight, from the Parade, Park Road, Shipsters Road, Walsall Street, Holden Street. So I think we need to have an evaluation of the whole area eventually. So that's why my recommendation is that we actually talk to Pembroke and ask them for their input to develop an integrated traffic management plan essentially for the whole area. So that's my suggestion for the resolution of this problem, to trial these areas, hopefully divert some of the traffic away from Oval Terrace. The residents accept that they've still got their arrangement to live up to, and that we undertake a whole review of this in March, that will then have had a successful trial for this term, which begins next week, and into the new year after the Christmas break, and that we should be able to get an idea then of some of the mechanisms that might work. So hopefully you will support this. Thank you.
I've just been advised by administration that they'd like to ask you if you could extend that, each of those by a month, making it April 2020 and May 2020. The reason being there's a large period of time from early December right through until the end of January when there's no traffic management to be assessed or evaluated. And the numbers of students in Term 4 are also, we know, lighter in number as senior students leave earlier. So we'd have a much better pattern and perspective on the timing if we were able to include slightly more time early next year, or once school starts next year, which is the prime time when everybody's there. So if you're willing to adjust that or modify your motion in that way.
And that'll take account of Easter and that.
Yes.
No worries.
So are you happy with, if we change that motion to April 2020 and May 2020? Thank you. And then I'm assuming Councillor Hughes, you wish to second?
I do wish to second. I don't have a lot to add. Councillor Davey has covered off on most of the points. I am one of those annoying people doing school pickup, but not fortunately in this street at this school. So I haven't actually seen this street in action because I'm obviously doing pickup of my own, but I can only imagine, having driven down the street, how annoying it perhaps could be for local residents. And I appreciate that the school's been there for a significant amount of time, but I think we also need to work with our local residents to try and find a good solution. So look forward to seeing the results that come out of this next year. Thank you.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I have a question, if I may. I noticed in the report that there were several people that talked about teachers parking on this street, Oval Terrace. Does anyone know how many teachers actually are employed by that school and whether they've got on-site parking?
Through the Mayor, I don't know how many staff are employed, but my observations in the morning is typically, in the report I've said sort of 1 to 3, typically it's more like 2 staff members that appear to park in Oval Terrace and walk down. The majority for the King's campus, staff appear to park in the off-street car park between the school and the reserve gymnasium area.
So can I assume from that, if I may, can I assume from what you've just told me that Pembroke doesn't provide on-site car parking for their staff?
Correct.
I would be very interested to know how many staff they employ. If you could find that out, or do I need to do a formal question on notice? I think that's an important issue for not just Oval Terrace but all the other streets as well. If they do not provide staff car parking, then our residents are actually providing their curbs for teachers, and that would be good to know. Thanks.
Councillor Dawes.
Hello, first time tonight. I've got on the microphone. I've got a number of questions, David, and I don't know if Magnus can also help here. I had another look today. I went down to Oval Terrace, went to Shipsters Road, went to Park Road, etc. So I thought I've got to understand all this because it is a very difficult issue to resolve. I was disappointed with the return rate of the survey, as Fran said, but I think that might be because you've got retirees and workers, you know, so I wasn't surprised. I noticed in paragraph 26, David, that you made a comment there that the number of traffic movements over a period of 20 years hasn't increased very, very, very much. In fact, I worked out that it's increased by only 31 cars per hour over 20 years. So I don't know if we can say that there's can I just explain how that worked out? Just so that I think you see Councillor Lemon, because 429 to 555 is extra 126 traffic movements per week, correct? Per week, 126. Is that correct? Pat, you can explain that to us, what that actually means.
Certainly, through the Mayor. That's average vehicle movements per day, per average school day.
Per day, yep, right. So that's an extra 63 cars have moved through that area per day. Because there's 126 movements, that equates to 63. Have I got that right? Per day, which means for the hour in the morning and the hour at night, or hour in the afternoon, hour in the morning, there's an extra 31 cars for each hour of the day.
No, for the entire 24-hour period of the day, that's how many cars
the whole
it's increased.
24, so it may not just be the hour we're talking about, but more likely it would be those 2 hours. It's not a through road, so it would be mainly school traffic we're talking about. Is that correct?
Correct. Certainly the majority of the traffic is school. There's a component that is residential traffic of both vehicles or residences that access Olympic Lane and those few driveways on at the southern end of Oval Terrace. 20 years ago, I'm not quite sure whether those houses even existed 20 years ago, those first few.
Right. Yeah, okay. So it has increased over that 20-year period. And I think you said in paragraph 27 that was acceptable. I think you used the word acceptable. A couple more questions for you. In paragraph 38.3, you talk about a continuity line, 38.3, and I was trying to work out what that meant. Does that mean that we have a dashed line going across Oval Terrace and Uxbridge Street along Park Road? What's the idea of that? To keep the cars in line with the curb? Or I didn't quite understand what a continuity line is.
The continuity line, the parking lanes, because Park Terrace is quite a wide road, the parking lanes are actually marked on it, line marked, but that line marking ceases before the intersection of the side roads, i.e. Oval Terrace. The continuity line is a dashed line that'll extend from one side of the parking lane to the other.
Okay.
And it gives an indication of where the nose of a car can be pulled up to safely to maximise the distance, side distance either side before entering that park road in this case.
So we're saying in our report that we want the school 1 hour to be reduced to 30 minutes. My question to you is, are we shifting the problem to the Park Road residents? Because there's a smaller time space to have the kiss and drop, and so therefore they're looking for other places to do it, and therefore the residents on Park Road are going to have a kiss and drop, and so they're going to get, after this trial, more complaints from more residents.
Through the Mayor, our observations basically show that busy period of when most of the kids are being dropped off or picked up actually only extends to the maximum for half an hour. So what we're looking at really doing is removing a 15-minute buffer of where there's not much activity and condensing it down to half an hour of when the actual true busy, intense period of traffic and drop-off and pick-up occurs.
So this trial we're going to have now to April will include a kiss and drop area on Park Road. Is that correct?
Through the Chair, and just to add to that, with the trial period will also include one on Shipsters Road as well.
But that is along the curb. There's no, I think Fran was talking about hoping a semicircle where cars would come in and drop in and go on to Shipsters, where when I went down there, you'd have to have it on Shipsters Road itself. Is that correct? That's
yes.
Right. All right. So this issue may create more issues. We just don't know, and that's why we need a trial. Is that what we're saying?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carbone.
Question to the administration, Your Worship. I mean, this is not isolated. We all have schools in our wards. I've certainly got issues with Glenunga International and Seymour. So the question is, do we have, and if we do go down this route, do we have enough parking officers to manage this?
Through the chair, it depends on, we don't have enough parking officers to look at every school every day, so that they will go through rotation. So you won't find every school having parking officers every day, but you will see them from time to time through all schools.
So just so I know, let's take the morning, for example, 8 to 8:30. How many parking officers do we have on the roster at that point in time?
Through the chair, typically 2.
So we can only manage 2 schools at one point in time.
Councillor Lemon.
So I have a follow-up question for that. Those 2 people that are rostered on between 8 and 8:30, are they actually managing schools or are they elsewhere? Is schools a priority for them?
Through the chair, yes it is. There is a further report coming to council shortly, which is not about Pembroke, it's about the range of services function holistically. And we have been trialling earlier starts, so from 7:30 until 9:30 at night, so we have been able to dedicate more ranges to more things, and schools have always been a priority, but continue to be.
Thank you.
Councillor Carbone.
Follow-up question, Your Worship, to the administration. Do we need more parking ranges?
I'm going to assume that's going to be part of your report. So does that help answer that question for you?
Oh, I like your thinking.
Did you wish to answer that? Sorry.
I was just going to say, through the Mayor, as Magnus referred to, there will be a report going out hopefully to the next council meeting, which will review the resourcing of our Rangers Services Department. So yeah, that will follow shortly.
Is that the same report where we will be looking at insourcing?
Yes, it combines both. So it's insourcing the service and expanding the hours of the services that we provide.
Thank you, Worship.
I don't have anyone else on the screen, so can I go back to Councillor Davey?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your interest, everybody. It is a vexed issue because it's a very unusual issue. This is a really unusual little cul-de-sac which was created about 12 years ago to accommodate Pembroke and their middle school. So that little island that was carved out was actually part of the parklands, and a road was built through that, because that little island is actually a biodiversity area, linked with the biodiversity area on Park, at the end of Oval Terrace and Park Road. The homes in Oval Terrace, for anyone who's been down there, are all really old. They've probably all been there 100 years, except for the 3 down the end adjacent to Park Road. So those homes were there long before cars were, in actual fact. And most of the, 14 of the homes, I think, are housing trust tenancies. So that big row of terrace houses are all housing trust tenants who have no choice where to live. They're told where to live. But their use of it has changed. So they need access cabs, they need carers, they need cleaners, they like to have visitors. So there's a whole raft of issues why they need people to be able to drop them at their front door and stay there perhaps for an hour or 2. Some of them have got access from Mears Lane for a family car, but there are still major problems. The major overriding issue, is issue of teacher parking, the use of the streets around the school. There are lots of school students who are given parking permits, I believe, who park in the streets, park their own cars. So there's a huge demand for access to the school and parking around it. And this trial is to trial a new approach with the opportunities that it presents in Shipster Street now with a new area after all the construction works, to see if we can disseminate the drop-off zones instead of them all being concentrated in one area, spread them out a bit. It'll be safer for the drivers and the students. Hopefully the residents will accept it. I mean, they don't want any parking, any drop-off in their street. They would actually like that to be a no-through zone and resident-only access. So, you know, that's probably not reasonable and achievable, but I think we can go some way to helping meet their needs. So our wonderful traffic management staff have got these challenges, and we'll look into how we can work with Pembroke to develop an integrated traffic management plan for the whole area, because the traffic's only going to get worse and the demands are going to increase. So hopefully you'll support this motion. Thank you.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. 13.11, Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I move the officer's recommendation, but I particularly wanted to move this particular motion so I could speak to it for a moment. I found it extremely well written, and I found it extremely informative. I love a document where you've got graphics, and you've got graphics that are coloured, so you don't actually have to read text, you can get things at a glance. And I just wanted to share with the chamber what I got at a glance. In my ward of all of Burnside, we have the biggest amount of Chinese speakers. We have the most lone households. We have the most social disadvantage. We have the greatest number of households that require care assistance. We have the least Year 12 completion rates. We have, in all of Burnside, the greatest unemployment rate, and we have the least amount of cars. I know that this is in quick stats, and some of these stats I've actually got for myself, but I found this incredibly interesting, how the Eastwood and Glenunga ward is so different in those measures of social disadvantage with the rest of Burnside, and it has absolutely made me stop in my tracks and think, I might have to start doing things differently, because we cannot assume all suburbs are alike. When you see these sorts of stats, granted they are 2016 and things have changed, we've got very expensive housing now that's been sold in Cedar Woods, may change things somewhat. We also have the greatest amount of aged people in designated spots, but then I realise we've actually got a couple of retirement villages next to each other. But again, I'll really support this motion, which is nothing at all about what I'm speaking. It doesn't reflect what I'm speaking about, but certainly has given me huge amounts of information. And again, it makes me feel that EHA really provides a very valuable service, certainly to my ward. So I hope you support this motion.
Seconded by Councillor Davey.
I'm very happy to second this. I endorse all of the comments that Councillor Lemon has made, although I didn't focus on her ward as particularly as she did. But I think this is an excellent document. I commend all those who've drafted it and had input into it, and I think it's very valuable, and I congratulate Councillor Cornish for his role and whatever role he's had as Chair of EHA in helping to develop this. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. I too want to support both sentiments being said so far. I was on the committee that planned the original Better Health Plan for the EHA, and what we did at that stage was to try to get the data and find out what we were all doing. And in talking with Mr. Heinrich today, I also congratulated him, and you take this opportunity to congratulate the rest of EHA as well, this committee, because what it has done is taken this health plan to the next level, and the next level is identifying ways in which we can actually act on this data, that we can use this information, plan regionally, and also look at ways that we can fix, or we can use what we know about our community to help to develop plans for public health, because pretty much almost everything we do in council has actually got at the roots of it some kind of physical, social, emotional health attached to it. So I just really want to commend the plan, the new plan. I was working on an advisory committee for the state government with SA Health and the LGA for 8 months last year, working to develop the new public health plan. And I think this, having been on the 4P planning group, I think this has actually approached that 4P plan that the state government has put forward in a really positive way. So I just want to commend that, and I think the leaflet that will go out for community consultation, which picks up on those 4P key areas of the public health plan, really will work very well in terms of going out for the community to see what the community has to say. And I also want to commend, it does give us a spotlight on our own local areas to determine those areas of concern. And although I think unemployment is an issue that we certainly talked about, what we've also got potentially in Burnside is a lot of hidden unemployment too, that isn't even in the statistics that we look at. So commendations always for the production of this document. And I think I'm going back to Councillor Lemon.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to thank Peter Cornish's commitment over the years to this particular committee. I'm really glad that we're part of this. So I hope you support the motion.
All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. So we now do to our subsidiaries. 4.1.1, page 323, East Waste Management Authority. Can I have a motion, please, to accept the recommendation? Councillor Cornish, seconded by Councillor Lemon. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 14.2, Eastern Health Authority. Motion, thank you, Councillor Lemon, seconded by Councillor Cornish. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 14.2.2, EHA Audited Financial Statements. Councillor Cornish, Councillor Lemon, seconded. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 14.3, 14.4 and 14.5, no reports. 14.6, can I have someone to move 14.6.1? Councillor Cornish, seconded by Councillor Lemon. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. 14.6.2, the audit report for Brown Hill Creek. Councillor Lemon, Councillor Cornish, seconded. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Mayor's report. Councillor Henschke, moved, seconded by Councillor Cornish. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Reports of members, delegates and working parties. They've all been submitted accordingly. 17.1. Councillor Davey, do you wish to have anything in addition to say about Milton Moon?
Yes, I just wish to note the passing on September the 6th of Milton Moon, who was a very eminent artist, ceramicist and potter who he spent quite a bit of his time in Burnside, living in Erindale, and he retired in Beulah Park. But in his heyday, he had a residence and gallery in Summertown. He also taught at the South Australian School of Art. I think he was awarded high honours in our Australian Honours list.
Yeah, AO.
And he was a internationally renowned artist. And he lived amongst us, and in his retirement years lived in Beulah Park, as I said. So he lived to a good age, but he was a wonderful contributor to our arts and culture in Burnside and the wider area.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Seconded by Councillor Henschke. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Correspondence regarding the boundary survey. Councillor Cornish moved. Seconded. Councillor Councillor Lemon. All those in favour? And 17.3, the administration was advised, I actually also got advice of this from a resident, Mr Greg Waller, who was employed at the council from the 10th of the 8th, 81 to the 7th of the 6th, 96. Also worked at Salisbury Council and was an elected member between 1998 and 2002. So the sad passing of that particular member or past member of this area and of this council. I'm happy to move that, and seconded by Councillor Cornish. Those in favour? Carried unanimously.